Hi, this is Sahana. We are learning ASP.NET Core MVC concepts one by one. As part of the series, we are going to learn data annotation in our today's session. Let's start with what is data annotation. It's a feature available in the framework that adds some extra information to the data that are used for different purposes. If the framework has given this feature, then there must be some advantage of using that, right? Those advantages are data annotation are used in model validation, then database modeling, and it is also used to control the display of attributes. We shall understand all of them one by one. This is our ASP.NET Core MVC application. If you want to follow the series, I'll keep playlist link in the description. Later you can go through previous videos. This is how it looks. Let's start with understanding what role data annotations play in model validation. If I click on tutorial, we get an option to add new tutorial. Inside models folder, we have a model by name tutorial. Here we have ID, name and description. This model represents tutorial. Here I have a form where I can enter name and description. When I submit, the data is carried to the server and new tutorial record is created at the database. However, there is a small problem with this application. We did not include validation anywhere in our application. Suppose there is a rule saying name and description should contain text and it should not contain pure number, then our application will fail. Let me just show you. Here you can see name and description are pure number. I'll click on submit. See, new record has been created. Now what is the solution? The solution is to have validation. Whenever user enters data, we should validate that data to make sure it is in line with our business rules. Do you know the best thing about .NET Framework? We have a feature called data annotation, which makes this process a lot more smoother. Let's understand how to use this feature. In our case, we don't want name and description to be numbers. We want name and description to be pure text. Here we have tutorial model and we have these properties name and description and ID. To make use of data annotations, first we should import the namespace System.ComponentModel.DataAnnotations. After importing the namespace, we can apply suitable attributes. I'll show you how to do that. Let's say my business rule says name should contain only characters. It should not contain numbers or special characters. To meet this validation, what I will do is, on this name attribute, I will apply regular expression attribute and specify the regular expression. Our model is ready with necessary attribute. Now we can open respective controller. Here inside controllers, I have tutorial controller. Here you can find create tutorial action method with HTTP post attribute. This method handles our form submission. Right now, if you look at the code, we don't have any validation here. The moment we get form data, we are creating a record inside database. Now it is time to apply necessary validation. Again, framework comes to our rescue and we have something called as model state which stores all the validation errors. What we can do is, before writing data to the database, we can check if model state is valid. If it is not valid, and we can ask the user to resubmit the form. If the data is valid, then go ahead and create a record inside database. What is the next step? Here if you see, if there are any validation errors, we are sending the form back to the user to resubmit the form. At the same time, what we can do is we can let the user know what are the validation errors so that he can correct himself and fill the right data. How to do that? To do that, I'll open a view file that has this create form. This create tutorial.cshtml file has a form that helps us to create this tutorial. If you look at this form, we are using few tag helpers, ASP controller, ASP action and ASP for. The same way, we are going to use one more tag helper, that is validation tag helper, to display validation errors. I'll use span tag and we are using validation tag helper and we are binding this to name property. Whenever there is some validation error, that will be displayed here. Let's verify if our validation rule is working or not. I will add new tutorial. This time I will say same number and number in the description. I'll submit. See, we are getting error. The field name must match the regular expression. This means our validation rule is working and we are getting validation error. If you want to customize this error message, we have an option. I'll show you how to do that. We are at the model. Here we have defined regular expression. After specifying regular expression, we can make use of this error message property and we can mention customized error message that we want to display to the user. I'll submit. This time see we have different error message. Please enter text. If you want to make these two fields mandatory, then you can use required attribute. You make the fields mandatory and if you don't supply value, you will get error message. I'm using validation tag helper for description. Let's see the changes now. We have made both these fields required. This time I'll not give any value. I'll click on submit. We are getting error message. The name field is required and the description field is required. This is because of required attribute. Our model is extremely simple. We have only two fields, name and description. But model can have different attributes. Your model may have phone number, email ID, credit card, many other things. Data annotation namespace has built-in attributes for almost all the cases. Here is the MSDN page for data annotations namespace. Here you can find a list of different built-in attributes available. If you want to know how to use these attributes, here you can find description. Let's say you want to use compare attribute. Here this says provides an attribute that compares two properties. If you want to know how to use it, you can click on this. You will get variety of examples as well. Again, you will find a list of properties that you can use with that particular attribute. If you want to know how to use this error message, again click on that. You will get documentation on that. You might already know these things, but assuming you are a complete beginner, I thought this extra information will help you a bit. If you want, you can have a look. Now we know how to use these data annotation attributes for validation. Let's understand how data annotations are used in database modeling. You might already know that in code first approach, first we create models, then we create database tables out of it. In our application, the same tutorial model is used to create database table tutorial. Inside context folder, you can find tutorial DB context. You can see that tutorial model is used. In our tutorial model, we have a property by name ID. The default nature of Entity Framework core is if we have property by name ID, that will be used to create primary key. If Entity Framework core do not find a property by name ID, it will look for a property that has a name with a combination of class name and ID. In our case, it will be tutorial ID. Then property with that name will be considered as primary key. What if we don't have a property with any of these names and we want to have some other name for our primary key? Then again data annotations attribute comes to our rescue. Let's say I want to have tutorial primary ID as the property which represents primary key. In that case, I should use key attribute and it denotes one or more properties that uniquely identify an entity. That is, this property will be used to create primary key. If you have some other table and you want to use foreign key property, then you can use, then you have an attribute by name foreign key. Say you have one more property by name extra field and you don't want to use this property while creating database table. Then what you can do, you have property by name not mapped. This is inside data annotations.schema namespace. Property with this attribute will not be used while creating database table. More example is Entity Framework core uses same name for database table. If you want to use some other name, then you have a property by name table and you should use it on class. In my case, let's say I want my table name to be tutorial table. I will use this table property and I'll mention table name. Again, this is nice MSDN article where you will get plenty of examples and you will understand how to use different attributes. I'll keep this link in the description box. I hope this document will help you. The reason I'm mentioning this document is we cannot cover all the examples and all the attributes in our session, but this session will help you to get started with data annotations. If you want to use different examples, you can come back to this document and you will get nice examples. Now we shall understand how we can use data annotation to control the display of attributes. In our create tutorial form, we have name and description. If you look at this create tutorial.cshtml, here we have label for name and label for description. But we did not specify any value here. Then how are those texts appearing on the screen? Then they are appearing because of this ASP for tag helper. Let's say you want to keep property names as it is, but you want to have some different name for display. Then you can use display attribute. I'll show you. I want my display name to be tutorial name. And for description, I want it to be tutorial description. I'll save the changes and let's see the UI now. See, now we have tutorial name and tutorial description displayed on the screen. That is the magic of data annotations. I hope the session was useful. If you have already subscribed, thanks for your support. If you are not, do consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks for your time. See you soon in the next video.